Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, the podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Laura and Chris Spath are a wife and husband who have lost a combined 250 pounds in a little over a year on the carnivore diet. After trying crash and fad diets for years, they found sustainability through eating just meat and also resolved a variety of other health issues. Welcome to the show, Laura and Chris.
Thanks for having us, Scott. We're excited to be here.
Thank you, Scott.
Great. Well, I'm super excited to have you both on and have followed you both on Instagram and read your stories on Meat Heals, and am really inspired by your journeys and your backgrounds. But for folks who aren't familiar, maybe it'd be helpful. We can have Laura, you go first, and then Chris, just talk a little bit about where you're coming from and how your health has evolved.
Sure. I guess it's hard to know to combine or separate, but I will just talk about my journey, and then it kind of overlaps with Chris a little bit.
Great.
But I've always been heavier. I think, I was a size 12 maybe in high school, and then went to college, and most people gained a lot of weight in college, and kind of went up and up from there. When I graduated college, I, was probably 30, 40 pounds heavier than I was as a freshman. And then just gradually continued to gain 5 to 10 pounds a year over time. I would maybe go on a diet for 2 months, lose 20 pounds, and then celebrate and eat something bad and really never go back to it. I did hit probably over 200 pounds for the first time 8 years ago, and decided I really needed to change. And I actually went on a vegan diet for about a year, and I lost 50 pounds. I lost my hair. My hair started falling out. I had a lot of skin issues and really felt weak and drained all the time. I was really just eating, meal prepping, and sleeping when I wasn't at work. And so really I went back to eating meat, and terribly, really it was more for health, weight loss reasons. So I went back to the standard American diet and gained it all back again and more. When Chris and I met, we got pregnant right after we got married, and I gained 50, 60 pounds with that first pregnancy. And then after she was born, I just decided I was going to be really strict and went on a low carb diet, ate Quest bars, low carb tortillas, chicken breast, tons of vegetables, and really struggled actually with my milk supply during that when I was breastfeeding. And I was on such a calorie restrictive low carb diet that I really struggled to maintain, breastfeeding with our daughter. And so I kind of went off the rails and decided, forget it. It's not worth it. I would rather, have a healthy breastfeeding relationship. And so I ended up introducing carbs, but then that also meant ice cream apparently is necessary, and a lot of other junk. And, I had gotten down, I had lost 50 pounds through that fad, and then I gained back 60 and got pregnant with our son and got up to my highest weight. I think when I went into labor with him, I was right around 250. And after he was born, I just decided, you know what, I'm not even going to try to diet because it was too hard last time with nursing, and I don't want to deal with it. So I just kept eating, normal standard American food, pizza and chicken breast and vegetables and rice. We would have, rice and chicken and vegetables a lot to think I was being healthy. And really then spent the next 2 years, I would go on a low carb diet and lose 20 pounds, and then I would gain back 30, and then I would lose 30, and then I would gain back 40. And I did that for several years, until a year ago when our son was about ready to turn 2, I realized that I weighed more than I did with him that I went into labor, and I weighed 263 pounds. I'm 5'8", and I was just really physically miserable. I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and keeping up with them was really stressful and frustrating. And I just was pretty miserable. And that kind of overlaps with Chris. I'll let him tell his side of it.
Yeah. So, going back to the beginning for me, I was someone who always struggled with weight and eating, a relationship with food. So even as early as high school, I was a little overweight. And then after high school, I went into the military, which I had to actually lose weight to be able to go into the Air Force. And then after I did my 4 years, I started putting on the weight and just continued, making poor food choices over the years. Like Laura, I tried different things here and there and did have some success with like an Atkins back in the early 2000s, and would drop some and then go back onto the standard American and balloon back up. And then eventually, just after we met and we got married, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So that caught up to me. And even after that, we did do some low carb again and had some success. But like Laura was saying, we went right back to the same old thing. And eventually I wound up getting necrotizing fasciitis, which is like flesh-eating disease on my arm. And I almost died. And that was a really traumatic event for our family and for me. And coming out of that for about a year after, as I kind of got myself back together, I knew that it was really a metabolically driven condition. Type 2 diabetic is much more susceptible to something like that. And I really decided I wanted to live. So I started going down the rabbit hole of the internet, trying to find, the best ways to deal with type 2 diabetes and to lose the weight and obesity and all this stuff. And then I really just fell off the cliff of YouTube videos and podcasts and whatnot. And
I think we had started
where it started.
Yeah, we started January 1st, like everybody, 2017, saying this is the year, or 2018. Yeah, 2018. We're gonna lose the weight this year. And then between January and March, we stopped and started keto, some form of keto diets for those 3 months, and just really nothing clicked. We would lose 10 pounds and then have a cheat day and then kind of never really get back into it. So we spent those 3 months kind of on and off of some version of a keto diet. And then in March of 2018, I had a conference coming up 2 months later, and I realized that my 2X shirts didn't fit, and I had to use those shirts to speak at a conference. And they didn't make any shirts for women bigger than a 2X. And so I had to either order men's shirts or get my act together. So I kind of gave us on a timeline. Is where we kind of started again in March of 2018.
Yeah, it's amazing hearing Laura and Chris. First of all, thanks for sharing your stories, but it's amazing hearing how you went through it all together and you're both battling and trying so hard to fix your health. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's what's going on. And there's just this constant struggle and failure to find information, find a diet that works for you. And it's not like, you lacked discipline or you lacked trying new things or putting in a serious effort. It's just these things didn't work for you.
Yeah, we were kind of our biggest support system, but during those years, we were also our biggest downfall, I guess. One of us would start the diet and the other one's like, all right, well, now I'm on board. But then one of us would have a cheat day and then the other one would have it. And then we would cycle through together quite a bit.
Yeah. And just for context for people, how old are your children? I'm just curious, as you're going through this and battling your health, I'm sure your minds were on them the whole time.
Yeah, we have a 3-year-old boy. He just turned 3, and we have a 5-year-old daughter, and I have a 20-year-old daughter from a previous marriage.
Got it. And so you talked about March of last year, March of 2018. Who found the carnivore diet? Did the other one think they were crazy? Did you try to convert or convince each other? How did that kind of evolution play out?
I think where we really started was with keto, and Laura got a little bit of a jump start on me because I had a trip planned with my dad actually, and we were going to go do a bunch of stuff. So I wanted to wait till after that. And
so I started like keto in March, still with the same thing, like processed foods a little bit, and we quickly got rid of those. So pretty quickly we went down to like a whole foods keto diet of just like meat, vegetables, nuts.
And I always hated vegetables, and I would only eat them just because the eye rolls I might get from Laura when we're sitting at the table together. So I would eat like 3 little pieces of broccoli and convince myself, that was enough vegetables for me. And I've always loved steak, and meat has always been my favorite food my entire life, which is kind of why this diet works so well for me. But
he also was eating like raw spinach as like pretending it was a chip for a while. And so
yeah.
He's like, I'm eating chips with my meat, and it was raw spinach leaves.
Yeah. And it seemed kind of silly. I was forcing myself, but you learn so much over time that you think that that's necessary, and then you have to do these things, and I wanted to get better, and I wanted to fix myself, and I thought that was necessary to do that. And then going down with the internet, I came across the carnivore community. I think first probably through hearing Jordan Peterson, and then Sean Baker on Joe Rogan, and I stopped vegetables right then immediately.
I came home from work one day and I brought home like spinach from the grocery store, and he's like, I'm not eating that. Throw it in the trash. I saw something on the internet today. Spinach is causing my kidney stones. So He's like, forget spinach. It's out.
That's great.
Yeah, so I was carnivore from there. The only thing I had to cut out, I think at that point that I might have been eating was macadamia nuts, because those are really yummy, but addicting. So I had to stop eating those. But if you tell me I can eat my favorite food every day and it's going to make me healthy, I'm signed up.
And how did you convince Laura to try it? Or how long were you on strict carnivore before she jumped on board?
It was several months that I was carnivore, and maybe somewhere between 1 and 3 months. I don't know the exact time range. Laura might know that better, but I never tried to convince her. I just did my thing, and I would sometimes mention little things about the broccoli she was eating and what chemicals were in it and things like that. But I didn't really try to push her. She was doing really well anyway.
Yeah. I think I hit a stall for a while, and hadn't lost weight in like 3 or 4 weeks, and Chris was like, you got too much fiber in your system. So he would make some supportive, but make some comments, stuff like that. And I kind of realized he wasn't crazy by accident, because he does most of the cooking in our house. I'm very spoiled. And he was cooking meat, and just so happened that for like a whole week, all I ate was meat and didn't have any vegetables on hand. And then by the end of the week, on a Friday, I ate like a big taco salad, some ground beef and cheese and sour cream, all stuff that was carnivore except a huge bed of lettuce. And that entire weekend, my system was completely wrecked. My digestive system, I was having stomach cramps and bloating. And I was like, I don't even know why this, taco salad I made is causing me so many problems. And Chris was like, it's the lettuce. So I really was like, all right, maybe you're right. And I started actually like reading a lot of the research that he had found, and kind of jumped on the podcast. I used to tease him about like, oh, how's your podcast listening today? And next thing I know, I'm like binge listening this podcast, right? And trying to learn as much as I can, and realizing that some of the vegetables I was eating were causing my digestive issues that I've had for a long time. And everything really started to clear up, and I instantly started losing weight again.
Wow. And Chris, when you started carnivore, what were your results like as well?
For most of the time, my results were pretty consistent. I lost steadily from the beginning, and my main driver was I didn't want to force myself to eat something I didn't like, for one, and especially learning about some of the things it can cause and some of the different toxins and things like that are there. If I don't like it, and B, there's potential negatives from it, why am I forcing myself to eat it? So it was more of an elimination from that perspective for me. It didn't really, I didn't really have any stalls because of it, or it didn't change the pace. I felt better afterwards. I felt more resolved from an adherence perspective. Like, it made it easy for me to every day look forward to what I'm going to eat and not think about having to put something with it that I really didn't care for. So it made it easier to be consistent.
Yeah, that's enough reason alone. Definitely something that you'll stick to over the long term. And Laura, maybe you can just start and talk about, I'm sure folks are curious, how much weight have you lost in total? What are some of the conditions or results you found, health issues you've alleviated through the combination of keto and carnivore?
My highest weight was 263 pounds. And then this morning, I weighed 143. So 120 pounds.
Wow.
I was actually about 5 pounds lighter, but I think my body composition has been changing over the last few months. So like in January, I weighed 140. But I've gotten a size smaller since then and yet gained a few pounds. So I've really noticed a big change in my body composition. And that's where I'm trying to focus on more now than just the number. But lost 120 pounds, and I was not on a lot of medication before other than like way too much ibuprofen for aches and pains. I've had back surgery before. I had back surgery when I was in college for some disc degeneration. And I actually, in February of 2018, had knee surgery. I had a torn meniscus, and that happens in football players and in people that are overweight. And that was 100% due to the fact that I was just putting so much stress and strain on my knees. And I've had no knee issues, or surprisingly, for the first time in my life, I have no back issues anymore. And I've had a lot of just digestive issues and skin issues. I've had acne for my entire adult life. I never had acne until I hit like 22. And it took me a long time to realize, like, wait a second, I'm not dealing with acne the way that I used to before. And that was, I'm sure, due to the sugar and the seed oils and the diet that I was on previously. And then just some lifelong, I think I've taken stool softeners to deal with constipation for, most of my adult life. And that was just something that I thought was normal, and I would continue to force more broccoli and more fiber, and that really only ever made things worse. So I've had no issues with digestion since then.
That's amazing. And I'm sorry you had to go through all that. That sounds really hard. I've had, a small fraction of those types of issues, and I can't imagine what it must have been like. Chris, do you mind sharing some of the results you got as well?
Sure. So, prior to starting this, I was 294 pounds. The last time I weighed myself, I probably was a little heavier than that, but somewhere close to 300. And I had type 2 diabetes. I had sleep apnea. I had high blood pressure. I had kidney stones in the past. I had pain all the time. I was taking tons of ibuprofen, but I was taking metformin and glyburide for diabetes. I was taking blood pressure medication, lisinopril, and I was taking atorvastatin for cholesterol, the whole 9 yards. And so I got down to my lowest weight so far is 178, and I reached that goal in around December, January, somewhere around the new year. And I've been bouncing between 178 and 185 since then. Just like Laura, I'm not as much concerned with the scale anymore, more body fat percentage and, composition, trying to still do, make some reductions in body fat while adding muscle at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I'm on no medications.
Yeah,
now.
He's off all that. No longer considered diabetic.
Right. My doctor actually took diabetic off my medical chart.
Wow. And on the medications piece, I'm really curious because I've heard of a lot of people coming off medications, obviously on keto and carnivore, and that's fantastic. And certainly no one should take this as medical advice, but I'm just curious how you got comfortable going off medications, especially being at a point where, a lot of the things you're taking were probably saving your life. Was it all the doctor reduce them, or how'd you go about that?
Well, when I first started, the doctors really had never helped me. They really never had any good advice other than here's a prescription to take. So I kind of knew I had to do something on my own. So I kind of geek out a little bit, and I like to know the mechanisms of the medications I'm taking, or at least I began to want to learn that stuff. So that's what I did. And I started, when I eliminated the carbs and I started eating the keto diet, I also implemented some intermittent fasting and even a little extended fasting to help deal with the diabetes part. And understanding what each of those drugs did, I knew that if I wasn't taking in any sugars, there was no real benefit to me taking those medications at that time. So I stopped those pretty much within a couple weeks, and my blood sugars came down significantly to where I felt comfortable doing that pretty much right away. About a month to 2 months in, I started getting really dizzy and lightheaded, and I couldn't understand what was happening. Of course, when you're new to this world, you think electrolytes and this kind of thing, and I knew it wasn't that. So I had my blood pressure checked, and my blood pressure was extremely low, and I was still taking my blood pressure medication, so I stopped taking that, and then I felt great again. The statin medication I was on, I stopped right away as well, just because after doing some research on the effectiveness of that kind of thing and learning, all that there is to learn out there now about cholesterol, I was very comfortable stopping taking that medication.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very interesting and always great to be your own advocate and do your own research and dig deeper into your own health and not just rely on kind of authorities or doctors. I'm a huge fan of that. And I guess you would be the perfect people to ask, but how important and what role did kind of supporting each other play, both through the challenges and as you were starting to see results on the carnivore diet?
I think that was where we were able to stick to it long term this time because, but in the past, we would always plan cheat days together. And this time, if one of us was feeling weak, we would talk about it with the other one. And we would say like, no, let's just wait. Let's push it back. And we actually then did start planning cheat days together. We were like, let's go 3 months straight. And our anniversary is coming up. We'll have a big night out and get some pizza on our anniversary. And then as it got closer, one of us would be hesitant, like maybe we don't want to do that. And the other one's like, yeah, let's wait till Thanksgiving. And then Thanksgiving got closer and we kind of supported each other in the sense that it really wasn't worth it. And I think maybe in the past, one of us would cheat and then the other one would jump on board. And we almost kind of were like, well, if I cheat, then you're going to cheat. So neither one of us can.
The other thing we realized too is we just didn't crave that stuff as much anymore. When I thought about Thanksgiving and mashed potatoes, I thought about steak, not mashed potatoes.
Yeah. We had some big steaks.
And we had some giant steaks, and you really learn to appreciate that food, and it's what you crave when you're not having that other stuff for so long.
Yeah, we talked about Christmas and cookies, and then we were like, you know what, let's just get some prime New York strips and giant crab legs and go for that route, and enjoyed having some special food, but still keeping it carnivore.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys sound like the best parents ever. I'm sure folks are wondering kind of how does this work with children? Do your children eat this way, or how does it work in kind of a family setting?
We do get that question a lot. I think as of today, our kids eat a pretty whole foods diet. We focus on keeping out grains and sugar, and seed oils is our biggest thing. We're not as concerned about carbs necessarily or keeping them keto. I don't want them having artificial keto treats anyway. So we really focus on, they eat, fruits and vegetables and lots of meat. They know that it's so hard with kids to know if you're supposed to talk about weight issues, right? We try very hard not to talk about that, but we do talk about the fact that mommy and daddy used to eat too much sugar, and that's what made us sick. And so when we eat too much sugar, then that can make you sick, and that we need to focus on high protein foods at every meal so that we can be strong and grow. And so, our son just turned 3 last month and he had birthday cake on his birthday. We understand those things happen and they live in life where those things are there, but we try to keep them on high protein, no sugar grains and seed oils, as much as possible. We still are both pretty conflicted though. How do you feed them something that has oxalates and we don't really know what that means. And we're still kind of figuring that out. In the beginning though, when we first started, they definitely still ate a much more normal kid diet, I guess. But in the last 6 months, that's really transitioned. The more that we focus on our long-term health, the more we focus on it for them. But we eat 1 meal a day. They eat, 3 meals a day. We just cook for them when we're not eating and we sit down and enjoy their company. And my daughter will say, "Hey mom, come and sit and chat with me while I eat." And we sit at the table while they're eating their meal. And just because I'm not eating doesn't mean we can't have like a family meal together still.
That's awesome. That sounds like a really excellent approach. And I like how you're not being dogmatic about it, but you're still really focusing on your values and making sure your kids have the healthiest food possible and you're not giving them something that could be harmful.
Yeah. And we don't give them snacks. We don't, every time they get in the car somewhere, they don't need a sugar snack or a, carb snack. I think when we realized that was the thing, they weren't wanting to eat lots of protein or meat at their meals because they were getting snacks between their meals. And so when we cut out snacks, for the most part, if an airplane ride here or there, they get something. But when we cut out snacks, we all of a sudden saw this huge uptick in their meals, and they eat 3 pretty solid meals a day now without needing snacks in between.
Yeah, that's awesome. That must be a massive relief. And I guess along the journey, you talked about doctors, but, I'm also thinking family members, relatives, who questioned you or pushed back against your diet along the way?
I guess probably I have more to deal with than that. Chris is, isn't around as many people, right? I actually have a lot of family members who have adopted a part of this diet. I have an uncle who's a strict carnivore now, and eats probably 5 pounds of beef a day. And he's really loving this, and he's the healthiest that he's been. He's off of his medication. My mom is reversed for diabetes with, she does eat some vegetables, but she's been dealing with some arthritis in the last few months and realizing that cutting out the nuts and the vegetables has improved that for her. So she's, experimenting with carnivore. But I do work in a corporate world, and there's a lot of people that have been supportive and that have kind of adopted this as well that I work with. But there's also people who tell me I have an eating disorder and that, why can't you just eat normal food? I personally have had a couple friendships that have dissolved a little bit over this. And that's not because of something that I'm bringing up to them, but I think that just sometimes when you're looking to improve yourself, it brings out insecurities in other people, and they kind of project the way that they feel about themselves onto you and your success or your health. And that has been a challenge for me. It sounds a little dramatic, but it definitely has been, that part has been a little hard, but it hasn't, I have many more supportive people in our lives than non.
Yeah, that's great. And it doesn't sound crazy at all. I mean, I think people, just like you said, they do feel threatened and they feel intimidated, and they want you to stay the same so they can feel comfortable staying the same themselves. And when they see someone making progress, achieving success, be it in diet, in their health, in professionally, they try to find a way to bring that person back close to them so that they can feel comfortable. And I think it's just a natural kind of human tendency.
And it's hard. I hear so many stories from people about that, when sometimes it's the people that you love the most or that love you the most that hurt you the most. And then really I hear stories about people saying, I ended up eating ice cream because I was getting shamed by somebody for not doing it. And that's a really hard place to be in. It's hard to be that confident in yourself. But the fact that Chris and I are doing this together has really helped us to not have that be a factor. We went on a family vacation and ate 1 meal a day and ate only meat. And we didn't try to make it a big deal. You don't have to draw attention to the fact that your, announcement, guys, I only eat meat and I can't eat this meal. Like we just would sit and visit and enjoy spending time with people without having to eat the same thing as them.
Yeah. That's a great point. And what are some of the biggest challenges you had along the way? I'm sure it wasn't all smooth sailing.
I think for me, and I don't want to speak for Laura, but is addressing my relationship with food, particularly now once I'm in a maintenance kind of position where I've always overeaten in the past. And with this diet, I've been able to still, in a way, overeat the entire time and still get the results I wanted until now. I'm kind of in a position where if I want to take it to the next level or make those last little gains, that I've really got to heal that part of me that satiety signals, when is it time to stop, how much is enough, those kinds of things. So I've been playing around with that lately, and that's been, I guess, a struggle because early on I always had the results. I would always see the scale going down. I would always see the clothes getting looser, and it would drive me. And we would almost drive each other. And, well, how much did you lose this week? And how much did you lose this week? So it was really easy,
we tracked it on our calendar, every Sunday we tracked our weights, and it was so addicting. But then when you get to a point where you're more in maintenance mode, for me, that's when the cravings almost came back. And the last few months have been mentally harder than the first year, or the first part of the journey, because you're trying to figure out, like, okay, now what? Is this forever? Like, what does forever look like?
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And I think I've struggled with the same things to some extent. And I guess shifting a little bit more into kind of the specifics, Laura and Chris, can you talk a little bit? You mentioned the OMAD, 1 meal a day. Can you talk about what you eat in a day, what the diet kind of looks like for you?
I think when I started, because of the diabetes, I learned a lot about fasting when it comes to, the therapeutic side of that for diabetes. So we started intermittent fasting right from the beginning, pretty much within the first couple weeks. And we would eat like 2 meals a day in like a 4-hour window. And then we started extending that out to 1 meal a day. And then we would do longer fasts, even 3-4 days at a time. And for me, that was like important to give my system that break to, heal the liver, the pancreas, and those types of things. Dr. Jason Fung was somebody that I did a lot of research on and a lot of things he recommends. So as I progressed, the fasting became less and less, became less necessary, and it just kind of settled in at 1 meal a day, because that was kind of what my rhythm would be, with my schedule, with my hunger. And I eat and still eat around 1.5 to 2 pounds a day, typically. Pretty much beef mostly, sometimes chicken. I've been over the past couple months toying around with the whole PE ratio and mixing in some chicken and leaner meats. And whereas in the past it would be ribeyes and bacon and all that kind of stuff. I used to eat a lot of cheese, but since getting down over the last few months, since getting down to under 20% body fat, to try and get that next level, I've cut out the cheese, I've cut out the bacon, I'm eating leaner, upping the protein to energy ratio, and had some success with that. And now I've kind of at a stopping point again where it's kind of stalled again. So now I'm even looking at the higher fat kind of ratios to try and maybe test some of that out after some of the more recent conversations on that topic.
Interesting. I think once you get under 20% body fat, a lot of the old tricks just stop working. I think that's very common for people. They just are like, man, what do I do now? Everything that worked so simply and so, it's not linear, but you saw consistent progress. All of a sudden you're not getting that anymore. So I think it just takes time. And it sounds like you're doing all the right things. How about you, Laura? What does kind of a day of eating look like for you?
A perfect or typical day for me is 2 pounds of ribeye grilled. I'm pretty basic. I felt, I'll mix it up with some New York strips or I love the flat meat from Costco, but it's really just 2 pounds of steak a day. I felt some pressure for a while to add some variety or to cut back on my portions. And so I tried to do that. And honestly, it just caused me a lot of mental stress, and it almost increased my cravings to try to mix it up a little bit. And so where I feel comfortable and what I do, 90% of the time is just 2 pounds of steak a day.
Yeah.
At noon. I mean, I'm pretty simple.
Yeah, I pretty much eat around noon every day as well. And it's usually a steak and a chicken breast, or 2 steaks, or steak and some burger patties.
Yeah, I do burger patties once a week, but again, I'll stick to 2 pounds. Chris experiments a lot more with leaner meats and different variety, but if I do that, it just honestly stresses me out. So this weekend I ate some grilled shrimp with my steak, and that's about much variety as I get right now.
That's great. Well, glad you found what works for you. And Laura, you've had a lot of great posts recently, or I see people talking to you about the cost of meat. And sounds like you're both, working and trying to make this work economically. What tips would you have for folks around costs?
We shop sales. I mean, we get the newspaper ads, and if ribeyes wherever, we don't have a loyalty to a grocery store. So we do live in a big city, and we have a lot of access to different grocery store chains. And so we just buy what's on sale, or if I'm feeling fancy, I'll get a bunch of steaks from Costco. I mean, that's about as expensive as we get. I think that when we stopped looking at the cost of specific meat in general, we realized that we were spending so much more money before. I mean, I used to stop at Chick-fil-A every morning on my way to work. They opened at 6. I had to be at work at 6:30. They know me at Chick-fil-A because I was in line at 6 o'clock every morning. When I first started this diet, I got emails from them saying, "We miss you," because I hadn't used my app there in a while.
Oh my gosh.
So when I added up what I spent on Chick-fil-A, the ice cream we were eating at night, the cost of all the other foods, we were spending much more before than we were spending.
Not to mention the health costs.
I mean, the health costs, my health savings, I had some dental work done recently, and then I had $500 on my health savings card. We've always been negative, or every time it hit, we would spend it on prescriptions and doctor's appointments and blood work. And we've saved so much money just in prescriptions alone.
And I think that eating less often, a lot of people don't factor that in. So I might be eating a meal that's $10 worth of meat, but I'm only eating once today. So if you look at most people, they're eating 3 times a day, and maybe their meals are $5 a piece. And so they're spending 15 plus any snacks they have. So really they're spending a lot more than we are. My
office at work had a desk full of snacks that I would go through and have to restock once a week. And that was really expensive alone. But, if we're both eating around 2 pounds of meat a day, Chris is a lot cheaper than me because he's eating ground beef and chicken. But if I eat 2 pounds of nice juicy ribeyes from Costco, it's still $15. And that's much less than what you would spend. People tease us because if we're going to eat out, we go to Fogo de Chao, and that's expensive, or we go to a Brazilian steakhouse. But we go there once a month, if that, right? And if people order pizza every Friday night and that's their thing, going to Fogo de Chao costs less than eating out at a fast food restaurant once a week.
I love Fogo. I'm going there this weekend. I can't wait. You're making my mouth water.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And what, while we're on that, sounds like Laura's already answered the question a few times, but what's your favorite cut of meat?
Ribeye. Of course.
I think for me, right now it's the New York strip. For a long time it was the ribeye, but there's just something about as I've been a carnivore longer, I kind of appreciate the texture and density, I guess, of the New York strip. So I know I'm going into a lot of detail about it, but it's got a nice cap of fat around the side, and then a nice solid piece of protein in there when it's cooked right.
Yeah, I'm with you actually, Chris. I like New York strips better. I like kind of the contrast of the fat to the protein, and just like you said, the texture. It's great, especially if you cook it right. And I guess, both of you have become a part of this community, and you both had your own failures, own experiments, and also talked to lots of others. What do you think people get wrong most often with trying a carnivore diet, and any advice you would have for folks?
I think that one of the most common things I see is people overcomplicating it. And especially nowadays, there's a lot of, discussion about how much of this and that. You come from keto and there's all these macros and there's all these different things, and other diets, there's supplements for this and that and all this other stuff. And I think if people just start from a place of, I'm just going to eat this, I'm just going to eat meat, I'm not going to trim the fat, I'm just going to eat it, and start from there and make it simple and stop when I'm full and drink water when I'm thirsty. And then I don't need 10 gallons of water a day, and I don't need to put salt in it, and I don't need all these things. If I just eat like a human animal would eat normally, then I think that keeping it that simple would be best, rather than trying to stress yourself out dissecting it over and over again.
Totally.
I think that, I can overeat. I think you can overeat. In the beginning, it's important just to get adapted, but I can eat 2 pounds a day. It's probably maybe a little more than I need to eat, but I could easily eat 2 pounds twice a day. Like, I could eat 5 pounds of beef spread out throughout the day. I think that's the difference with somebody who has been obese. Your hunger signals and your body wants, if I'm looking for that Thanksgiving full feeling after every meal, like I used to do when I ate a standard diet, I'm not going to get that the way that I am now. And I could very easily eat 3 meals a day, massive amounts of beef, and gain a lot of weight likely. And so there is an element of you have to eat enough to keep yourself healthy and full and satisfied, but you also have to there's some healing that may happen. So a lot of women especially may start this diet and gain a little weight to begin with. But if you're gaining tons of weight, there is a possibility that you're eating too much, because I know a lot of people say that you can't overeat beef, but I certainly could. From somebody who has been obese, it is very possible. And those hunger signals and full signals are very different, for me than somebody else who's 140 pounds and has never been obese. It's very different for them than it is for me.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And I think that's great advice as well, Laura. And are either of you incorporating any organ meats? Do you supplement at all? Anything like that? Right after Chris says, keep it simple.
It's crazy. There is these two different worlds, this like muscle meat only world right now, or the liver and collagen stuff. And honestly, we tend to lean more to the muscle meat side, just because I don't personally know. Right. We read all the research and we debate it a lot, and we talk about if that's something we should do. At this point, we take no supplements whatsoever other than salt on our food, and we eat muscle meat. What that means long-term, is that something we may add in someday? Maybe. I think that as a baby carnivore, if you told me that I had to eat liver and cooked or raw, I don't know if I could have stuck to this and done it. And so I think that at this point, we're not doing those things. It doesn't mean that we won't do them in the future. Our tastes have changed dramatically over the last year, and I can see that, who knows where our health will go. Go ahead.
I'm not eating no liver. Never. This is going to work or it's not.
So
good for you.
I don't know. We're still in the middle. We still debate that a lot, if it's needed or not. To me, the people that I see doing this really long term are eating muscle meat, and that's what we do. It doesn't mean that we're right. It just means that that's what's working for us.
Yeah, That's great. It's a great attitude and great approach, and I totally support that. I'm the same way. I've gone back and forth on the issue. I don't know what the right answer is, and I've tried both, and I think on one end of the spectrum, you want to make sure you're not getting any nutrient deficiencies. You want to eat the best possible diet where you'll feel the best and perform the best and be the best. And on the other side, you want to keep it simple, to Chris's point, which I think is an awesome point. And if you make it too hard, you're not going to be able to comply with it. Getting back to your point right at the beginning, why you switched to a carnivore diet from keto.
I think that's where we're seeing like sustainability in this, is because it is something that we're not feeling deprived. We're feeling full. We're enjoying what we're eating. And not only that, but we feel amazing. And it's really, cured a lot of our health issues. And I think if you had told me I had to eat raw liver from the beginning, I probably wouldn't have done that. But if it optimizes people's health, then I support it. It's really just, you have to find what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Laura, Chris, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think folks will really enjoy this. Is there anything else you would want to share with the audience before we wrap?
I don't think so. We just really enjoyed this. This has been a thrill for us, and we've enjoyed your program.
Yeah, we listen all the time. We're big fans, so we appreciate being able to talk with you.
Great. And where can folks find out more about you on social media or otherwise?
We are, I'm on Instagram, and my name is Laura E. Spath. People think it's Laura's Path, but Laura E. Spath.
And I'm Chris J. Spath on Instagram as well.
Awesome. I'll link to those in the show notes and also share your meat heal stories. And thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered? Or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Carnivore Cast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.